A day in the life of Peter and Eve. In the tall dark cellar, Peter Thistle's alarm clock rang. He silenced it as quickly as he could. "Wake up, little sister," he said. In the tub next to his, Eve was still sleeping. Peter felt sorry for her. Eve was too young to remember what life was like before the war. It was a war that seemed to go on endlessly. Last night, enemy bombers had flown right over the roof of their house. The distant boom of the fallen bombs had lasted for a long time. Peter wished he were still sleeping. He had been dreaming of frying sausage. The war had caused food shortages, making meat almost impossible to find. Oh, if only Mother were cooking sausages for breakfast, Peter thought. He sniffed hopefully at the air, but all he could smell was the cellar's coal dust. At least, Peter thought to himself, I still have my jar of apple butter. He imagined spreading the jar's delicious contents on some fresh bread. Fresh bread, like meat, was difficult to find in the stores. The apple butter had been made by Peter's mother using apples, sugar, and spices. She had given the jar on his last birthday. Peter had decided to save it for when his brother Charles and his father came home. Charles was a soldier fighting in the war. Papa had to live in a town far away so he could help make tracks for the war. It's so dark in here, Eve droned. The morning light barely entered the glooming cellar. The cellar was gloomy for a reason. Before Papa had moved away, the rest of the family had made an agreement with him to stay safe from the enemy bombers by sleeping in the cellar. Papa did not want the enemy planes to see any light from the house. So together with Peter, he had covered the cellar window with dark cloth. They had also tied bundles of rags and old newspapers to the window so it wouldn't rattle when the planes flew overhead. The Thistle family lived an hour's train ride away from Berlin, the capital of Germany. The planes flew over the little town on their way to bomb the capital. The townspeople could see the flash of the bombs exploding in Berlin. Sometimes they made the ground shake. Peter, Eve, breakfast! Mother called from upstairs. Peter knew there wouldn't be any sausage. Still, he kept his hopes up. Maybe his mother had been able to get some fresh bread. But there was only yesterday's bread with the butter substitute that Peter hated. Mama, Herr Braun has 6 dairy cows. Can't we buy butter from him? Peter asked. Only the soldiers get butter, Mama said. Carl is a soldier. Do you think he's been lucky enough to have butter? Eve asked. I hope so, her mother replied softly. After breakfast, Peter and Eve walked to school. The schoolyard was filled with shouting and running children. When the headmaster appeared on the steps of the building, everyone fell silent and formed orderly lines. Peter watched his little sister line up with the youngest girls as they joined a line of older boys. Fräulein Mann was Peter's teacher. Peter worried about his teacher. She often looked sad and tired. Her dresses were faded, and Peter could see where she had been forced to mend them. Wringing her hands, Fräulein Mann rose to speak. Today, she began, I am pleased to introduce to you 2 of our town council representatives, Herr Mitzel and Herr Lutz. They will be speaking to us about our duty to Germany in this terrible time of war. Heil Hitler! Herr Mitzel shouted, raising his arms and clicking his heels. This was a salute to Adolf Hitler, the ruler of Germany. Herr Mitzel looked at their teacher expectantly. Heil Hitler, Fräulein Mann said softly. Peter could tell that she disliked giving the salute. Boys and girls, I am here to warn you about a terrible danger, Herr Mitzel began. There are those living among us who are not true Germans, he said, narrowing his eyes. I'm talking about Jewish people, boys and girls. Beware. Might someone you know be a Jewish people who is pretending to be German? It is your duty to turn them in. Harlots will now tell you how to stay safe from the Jews and others who will destroy our beloved fatherland. Perhaps, harlots began in a hushed tone, you have neighbors who have opened their homes to refugees, but how could you tell if those refugees are true Germans, like you and me? I have here a copy of a letter written in secret by a refugee who is pretending to be a real German. Our experts have translated it from a language used by our enemies. My friends, the letter begins, these fools feed me well with meat and sweets while I steal their money and learn their secrets. Imagine, boys and girls, these enemies are eating your sweets while they laugh at you. Be watchful. Tell us whom you suspect. We will report to our superiors, and action will be taken. You could be a hero, like a soldier. With that, Harlots and her Maidservant left. The room was quiet. Peter thought of his old friend Hans Tarp. Life in Germany had been difficult for the Tarps because they were Jews. Peter remembered the night a mob rushed through the windows of their house and painted terrible words on their front door. When Peter asked his mother why this had happened, she said that Hitler was telling the German people that Jewish people were to blame for all of Germany's problems. Peter's mother warned him not to believe this. Not long after their windows were broken, Hans and his family left Germany through the help of Fräulein Mann's cousin, Thomas. Thomas had once been a diplomat stationed in England. Just before England declared war on Germany, he was able to persuade the British government to issue a visa, a special pass that would let the Tarps travel to England. Then he sent a cable to the Tarps saying that they had permission to enter England. Right after that, the Tarps disappeared without anyone hearing if they had arrived safely in England. Peter's parents told him not to ask any questions about the Tarps' disappearance. School is now over, class, Fräulein Mann said. Peter snapped out of his daydream. It is time to go home. Peter and Eve walked home from school. When they got home, they found their mother standing in the kitchen reading a piece of paper. It was a letter from Tara. Their mother ladled out some soup for her and her children. Then she began reading the letter out aloud. September 21st, 1944. Dear family, now that I am stuck here in the field hospital, I at last have time to write. Don't worry, I haven't been wounded. The truth is, I have been made sick by a terrible stomachache. Oh, if only I'd been made from eating too many of your wonderful ginger cookies, Mama. But the doctors say that it came from eating spoiled food. They say that I will soon be well enough to return to my unit. Peter, when we last saw each other, you said that you hoped the war would last long enough for you to march into battle. I admire your courage, Peter, but you must not wish for such a thing. Instead, all of you, please hope for a quick end to all the fighting. There is a small chance that the army will allow me to return home for a visit. If I get a chance to do so, I will send a letter. Love, Tom. Won't your father be happy to hear about Charles' letter? Peter and Eve's mother said, while wiping tears of joy from her eyes. Eve, Peter, and their mother talked about what they would tell her in their next letter. We must make sure to tell him about the jar of apple butter I am saving for him, Peter said. The family sat down to eat their soup. Eve mentioned, Mama, today some men from the town council came to talk to us. They said there might be Jewish people hiding in our town and that it was our job to report on them. Why are Jewish people bad, Mama? Eve asked. Peter saw his mother glance over her shoulder at the open kitchen window. She looked nervous. Let's talk about this when we are safe in the cellar and preparing for bed, she said, leaning close to her daughter. I don't want our neighbors to hear us talking, she added. Mama, do we have to sleep in the cellar again? Eve asked. Yes, we'll be safer there if a bomb falls near us, her mother answered. Now don't play in the garden while there is still a little light. Peter watched his sister step out into the garden. I don't care if Hans Todd was Jewish. I know he was not bad, Mamma, he said softly. You're right, but we can't talk about that now, his mother responded. Later, when Peter and Eve were in the cellar with their mother, the family talked quietly. When your father fought in the war years ago, do you know who fought beside him? Their mother asked. Hans' father, Herr Tarp, Peter said. Yes, and do you know what Herr Tarp did? When your father was wounded in the trenches, Herr Tarp saved his life. Herr Tarp is Jewish, and he fought heroically for Germany, but the Nazis still forced him to leave the country. Mamma, Eve asked, are we Nazis? No, her mother replied. Not all Germans are Nazis, but the Nazis run Germany. They are bad people. They make me ashamed of our country. Peter added, Eve, you're too young to remember this, but Hans Todd used to be my best friend. I miss him very much. Eve looked confused. Peter, you and Mamma say the Tarps were good people, so why did Herr Lutz and Herr Maitzel say that we need to stay safe from Jewish people? They say that because the Nazis order them to, their mother explained. She added, some of them believe what they say. Others are afraid that the Nazis will hurt them if they don't say those things. But Mama, should we tell the people who say these terrible things that they are wrong? Eve asked. I wish you could, Eve, but the Nazis could hurt you for saying so. Still, you may tell or ask me anything you want, but only here in the cellar in whispers, her mother said. Eve nodded solemnly. Her mother continued, there are other people in our town who think like we do. They are helping Jewish families get away from the Nazis. Will you develop something to help them? Like what? Peter asked. There's that apple butter you've been saving for Carl and Papa. Would you give it to Jewish families who need it more? Mother asked. Of course, but how will we get it to them? Peter wondered. Take it to school with you tomorrow and give it to Fräulein Man. She knows people who help the Jewish people who are in hiding. Say that it is a present from your mother, and she will understand. Now, before we fall asleep tonight, let us hope for an end to this terrible war. Peter looked into the darkness. Soon, he hoped, the Nazis would lose the war. Then good people like the Tarps could come back home again, and Mama would no longer have to be ashamed of her country. The Hitler Youth. Hitler Youth. The Hitler Youth was founded by Adolf Hitler in 1933, the year he seized power in Germany. It was founded to ensure that German boys grew up learning to be loyal to Hitler over everyone else. In 1936, it was made law that all non-Jewish German boys joined the Hitler Youth. Membership in the Hitler Youth lasted for 5 years, from ages 13 to 18. Upon turning 18, children in the Hitler Youth graduated to become members of the Nazi Party. Their participation in the Hitler Youth ended officially at age 21 after they had completed 3 years of service with the German military. The Hitler Youth members were taught never to question Hitler and to obey the commands of his Nazi Party without fail. They were told to report back to their leaders about anyone who criticized Hitler or the Nazi Party.